Imagine all your hard-earned tax dollars going to pay for people who they are allowing illegally into the United States and incentivizing to come into the United States. You know, I travel a lot to Central America. I spend a lot of time on the US-Mexico border. I report and report and report on the crisis at the border. And by the way, there is a huge crisis on the border right now. In fact, part of that crisis, I believe, is basically incentivized by money that the United States government actually gives in the hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars to non-governmental organizations working on the border, acting as if they are protecting the migrants, when really what a lot of these organizations have done is incentivize the migrants to make this very dangerous journey to the United States. And it's all thanks to Biden now, because we've never seen anything quite like the Biden administration, have we, folks? They just opened the border wide open. That's part of their policy. Thanks, Biden. Thanks, Lisa Monaco. Thanks, everybody in the Biden administration that is trying to destroy this country. And I say that facetiously. This is unacceptable and it is wrong. It not only puts our lives in danger, but it perpetuates the horrors of what is happening at that border with human trafficking and the trafficking of children, as well as the trafficking of narcotics, which are killing our children here in the United States. And wait until I tell you how these groups are using your tax dollars and how much of it they are putting away in the bank. It's going to blow your mind. Like, nobody ever sent me a letter saying, hey, do you want to send, $100 million to so-and-so? No one ever said that. I guess they just take our taxes and do whatever they want willy-nilly with it. And we're supposed to be okay with that. Well, I'm not okay with that. And I know you're not okay with that. The administration is basically forcing you into being an accomplice in the trafficking of migrants across the US-Mexico border. That's what they are doing. We have now become accomplices in this crisis. And we are going to talk about that right when I come back. But first, Allegiance Gold. Gold and silver allow you to protect what you've worked so hard for. And it gives you back, guys, the control and the privacy that you need. What do I say? Diversify, diversify, diversify. And you can do that with Allegiance Gold. They will protect your assets with physical gold and silver, or have it delivered securely right to your front door. Get $5,000 of free silver. Listen to this again. $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. So don't wait. Call or click today, 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A, or go to protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks. I think you know that, but we can prepare. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A, or go to protectwithsara.com. So I want to start off with this report because this is huge. And it is important to put this into perspective. This is Fox News. The Department of Homeland Security announced, and go to foxnews.com for this story. Go to saracarter.com for the story as well. They announced this past week an additional $77 million for non-governmental organizations and communities at the border and elsewhere that are dealing with the ramifications of the migrant crisis, which is now in its third year. That is the top paragraph of the Fox News story. And it's written by Adam Shaw. I love Adam. He's a great writer. And I think this is a phenomenal story because it puts into perspective not just the money that they're allocating. You're saying, 77 million, that's pocket change, right? But it brings the total amount handed out this fiscal year to these NGOs to $770 million. That funding originated in the omnibus bill that was signed by President Biden in 2022. Now listen to this. Separate from that, the DHS is also requesting $600 million for just fiscal year 2023 as a supplemental for the FEMA funding. I don't even understand this. They are the ones, the Biden administration, that are leaving the borders wide open. Now, if you follow the money, then you start to get it. You start to understand it. You start to put it in perspective, right? When you follow the money. So I want you to think about how criminal this is. Not only are we becoming accomplices, we apparently have rules of law that our government doesn't even follow. You're not supposed to cross the border illegally. People do it all the time. They get to stay here. The people who are applying the right way, they're still waiting years and years and years. They're doing everything the right way. They're going through the background checks that are needed. Right now, we're seeing people flooding in. We aren't even doing background checks. Hey, we don't even know who over 1.5 million known gotaways are. Now, by the end of the Biden administration, there's going to be over 8 million people coming into the country illegally. How are we supposed to sustain that? How are our public schools supposed to sustain that? But that doesn't matter, because if you run an NGO and you happen to be buddies with Biden or not, you're going to get some of this pie. You're going to get some of these taxpayer dollars. And how much money really ends up in the pockets of the actual migrant? Very little. Very little. But I'm sure that everybody else is getting big checks, or the organizations are keeping that money in their coffers and making huge amounts of interest off of it. If that does not infuriate you, I don't know what else will. And plus, why would some of these cities even want to stop the migrant flood? Let me show you this. So the largest amount of the 77 million would be going to El Paso, Texas, which has been dealing with a lot of migrants, $13.2 million going to just El Paso alone. But see, the thing is, the migrants, they stay there. I go there. They were sleeping on the streets. Catholic Charities is getting a huge chunk of money. The Catholic Charities in the Diocese of San Diego is going to get 12.8 million. That's just under El Paso. And San Diego doesn't even get as many people as we get here in Texas. You know that. Think about what your kids and your families are paying for in groceries. Think about the insanity of inflation right now and this Bidenomics that is throwing us all for a loop. Think about how much it costs to put gas in your car. And now imagine all your hard-earned tax dollars going to pay for people who they are allowing illegally into the United States and incentivizing to come into the United States. And by the way, some of the people that we're not even checking could be terrorists. And I can tell you that right now there is a big investigation ongoing. And I don't know if y'all have seen these stories, but right now we've got an ISIS guy who just brought people across the border. They have arrested this person for being directly connected to ISIS, who is bringing migrants across the border. I want you to think about this. And this is an exclusive, by the way, from CNN. Great story. Smuggler with ties to ISIS helped migrants enter U.S. from Mexico, raising alarm bells across the government. Do you know what happened when I wrote about that? And I wrote about this many years ago. I covered this from the Defense Intelligence Agency. I broke classified information. Well, it became declassified when I broke it. They're trying to keep it under wraps. That the cartels weren't the only people we should fear, but it should be the terrorists as well. And when I broke a lot of these stories, it's alarmist. Terrorists aren't even thinking about using the border. That was the government lying to you. And of course, the government is lying to you because they have screwed up miserably. But not only are they lying to you because they've screwed up, plausible deniability, right? I didn't know that terrorists were going to bring people through the border. Oh no, it's too late. Sorry, the mall just went up. Sorry, you lost your children. Sorry, the building is blown up. Sorry. Sorry isn't good enough. Sorry is not good enough anymore. I am so sick of the government covering up for all of its failures. So while all of these nonprofits are making caboodles and oodles of cash, and we're keeping the migrants coming in, keeping the money flowing, and by the way, a lot of the money ends up getting recycled back into political parties. So some of these nonprofits, right? Recirculating the money gets circulated back into our system. They have people that they like, that they support. That's your taxpayer dollars. Let me tell you a little bit about the ISIS story, just so you can get a little, smidgen of information off this. The FBI is investigating more than a dozen Uzbek nationals that were allowed to enter the United States after they sought asylum at the southern border with Mexico earlier this year. A scramble set off when U.S. intelligence officials found that the migrants traveled with the help of a smuggler with ties to ISIS. While the FBI says no specific ISIS plot has been identified because the FBI is too busy investigating you and your family, right? You and your family. That's it. Hi, thank you. Thank you. I'm a domestic extremist. I go to Latin Mass. I'm a domestic extremist. Hold on to that roller coaster, folks, because this government has screwed up so wholeheartedly that only God can stop what is heading our way. Or fate. I don't even know. Because if I was a betting person and I have traveled, I don't even need to be a betting person. I've spent a majority of my life traveling throughout the Middle East. I grew up in the Middle East. I understand extremism. I also understand, war. And I spent a lot of time covering the war in Afghanistan. If Islamic State or Al-Qaeda are intent on targeting the United States or just showing that they're still around, they can have sleeper cells, and they probably already do, in our country, anywhere, in a city near you. You and your child could be going to the mall one day, and whoever has been brought in by these terrorists who were smuggling people into our nation because the Biden administration allowed it. So the only person, beyond the terrorists and everyone else that should be charged is the people in this administration, if something like this ever happens, should be charged with malfeasance. And he should be removed from office anyways. He has failed miserably, President Joe Biden. In protecting us, he has failed to protect our nation. Listen to this. Though there is no evidence at this point to justify detaining anyone, the episode was so alarming that an urgent classified intelligence report was circulated to President Joe Biden's top cabinet officials in their morning briefing book. For some counterterrorism officials, it shows that the U.S. deeply vulnerable to the possibility that terrorists could sneak across the southern border by hiding amid a surge of migrants entering the country in search of asylum. Did they really need to send that into the classified report to Biden's top officials? Because we have been reporting that on Fox. I have been reporting that for a decade now. And by the way, for the last 20 years. Plausible deniability. That's all they want. They want to pretend like they didn't know this was possible. Don't let them lie to you. And don't let them waste your tax dollars. It's infuriating. It's infuriating that we have been left 770 million tax dollars gone under this omnibus bill for a problem that they created. 600 million is requested by the DHS. Pima County, Arizona is now going to receive 2.6 million. Food banks, Texas and Arizona. And by the way, that does not include all the money that the UN is allocating to Central America and Mexico, hundreds of millions of dollars with no oversight. And by the way, I do not trust DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas at all. I think he is an absolute failure and he should be removed from office. What about Catholic Charities? Do you guys remember when I was down in McAllen on Zalduas Park, taking over Catholic Charities, Sister Norma, they owned the park. Not even anybody in the community could use the park, just giant tents. And what about COVID, guys? What about COVID? COVID's coming back. Isn't that what they said? Some new variant 11 people in the world have. They want to shut us all down now. I'm sure that's where they're going. But they're not worried about the border. And all the people that are coming across the border, not the terrorists, not the possible diseases, not the children that are being brutally raped and murdered, not the people that are being brought in here and enslaved. They're not worried about that. Or aren't they worried about that? Why do they make us feel like we are just losing our minds because we are so frustrated with how this government is running not only our nation, but is allocating our tax dollars? I can tell you this, that the poor people that really are the innocent people that are being trafficked into this country, if any of them have been raped or abused or harmed, they should sue the United States. They should yes, they should. They should, because guess what? They're incentivizing them. They should just personally sue Biden for leaving the borders wide open. And anybody else in his cabinet, after he's done, who has left that cabinet wide open, they should just sue them. I mean, they took the road, but they took it because they're incentivized. Because he said he was going to open the border, and apparently it's legal. Because even though the law says it's illegal, it doesn't matter, because if you get in here, you get in here. Point, Uzbeks coming across the border being led by Islamic State. How awesome is that, right? If you're a terrorist and you're leading a terrorist organization, the border at the United States is wide open because the president, whose only job it is to protect our country, is refusing to do so because his administration feels that they don't need to protect us. Maybe he really is the Manchurian candidate. Maybe we are living in upside down land. I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm furious. I know you're furious. I am, telling you this information so that you can make the right decisions, so that you are aware of what is going on, and so that you with me can help put a stop to this. Let's put some new people in office. Let's demand that they listen to us. Let's not take no for an answer. They work for us. We don't work for them. If you love today's show and want even more of the Sara Carter Show, make sure you rate this podcast 5 stars and subscribe on your favorite podcast app, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. And by the way, I'm going to do some really cool stuff with my X. I want to do some subscriber things that are coming up in the future. I haven't gotten there yet, but I will do that with you. And I would love for you to join me on X at Sara Carter DC. God bless you. God bless our nation. And God bless the great state of Texas. And pray that there are no sleeper cells planning to target any of our communities or any of our families because the FBI and our government has allowed them to come in.